Hello. What I'm going to do today is just presenting you with how we use validation with intelligence, as well as show you some examples of use cases that we have presented over the APJ region. So security, intelligence, and validation. Several things we can provide today is it gives you the confidence for your organizations how we can stop and defend against adversaries targeting your organization. Also, if all our attacks that we use for validation is based on intelligence-led. And with that, we're able to take the evidence from the testing that we can do and apply that to give you decisions in your business on what to do with that results. So some things that we can do with the adversary, we can look at things like how many attacks are looking at your organization, how the industry is reacting to those attacks, etc. So moving forward, we can then start to look about what is the problem here. With today we have investments, a lot of organizations are investing in a lot of security technologies. They're also looking at efforts of putting people on board. The challenge here is today is we're getting a lot of breaches happening in the world. You're hearing it in a lot of media. The thing is that what you need to look into is how effective those security controls are running or effectively working. And this is where we are coming to the term. To give you an overview of what security validation means is that today we have a lot of security controls. We have a lot of security controls in layers that are defending. What security controls don't do is provide the validation. And this is where security validation comes into play. We're actually trying to do proactively testing your security controls, but we're not actually trying to stop those attacks. We're actually measuring how well security controls are able to prevent that. So just based on our stats from our effective report, we've actually come across several stats. So for example, mission or missed reports, 53%, 74%. So these stats are very strongly showing you how validation can show you where those gaps are in your organization, especially with the SOC team. So security validation can provide you several things in play. Prove effectiveness, so we can run tests safely in your organization against the latest malware, against the latest adversaries or threat actors. And then we also have the ability to reduce your risk by identifying the gaps in your organization. So we've identified misconfigurations. We can then minimize by cleaning up those gaps. And then once we gather the data and the information, we can take that information and we can start to rationalize. So for example, we may have a technology that is actually providing better blocking than product A to B. So we can start to rationalize and better invest in the business and get a better return. So what I want to show you very much of a typical environment that we would see with validation being used. So here we've got on the left and the right, left and right is an environment, and in the middle we have several security defenses, in this example, networking. So we have various technologies from firewalls, proxies, DLP, and on the endpoint on the left, on the business zone, we have endpoints such as Carbon Black, etc. The key point here is that we want to test these controls to see how effective they are to block the attack that we're going to run through it. And this is what validation is purposely doing. So here we've got the attacker on the outside of the internet and the victim inside. And what we're trying to do is then run an attack that could be related to an APT or a vulnerability or a campaign that we want to test your controls in the middle. So what we do is we fire off these attacks, and as that attack goes through your controls, we want to make sure which control is actually providing the best defense in terms of blocking or detecting that attack. All that information is gathered into the validation platform, which is sitting in the middle of the diagram there. So validation is purposely there to do these checks, and this is just one of the many attacks that we can run through. and we can build up analytics and build up metrics on how well these will run. So what I want to show you here is how we actually utilize intelligence and validation together. So I'll take you through a very quick video of what you can see here. So here we've got our intelligence. We're actually taking the information from our intel, and we're actually going to start looking how we're going to use this intelligence. So the first thing we're doing is we're going to start targeting manufacturing. So we select manufacturing, we apply it. The next thing is what geolocation targeting. In this case, we'll select South Korea. Once we've selected the criteria of manufacturing and South Korea, we have a list of attackers on our list here. And we want to make sure we got the latest one, so I've selected the latest one here. And here we've got UNC 1130, which is related to North Korea. And we have a lot of intelligence about this, so we can see that it's got a few malware and also targeting South Korean manufacturing. Now let's look into it a little bit more, and we can start to look at the details of the intel about UNC 1130. Here we've got information, we've got the IOCs, indicators, but here we've got validation. And here we've got about 60 different type of attacks that we've assigned that we know that we can use related to UNC 1130. And they're email, web, etc. So we click on the validation, and it takes us into the validation platform, which allows us to then take 60 of those attacks. Now, that's related to UNC 1130. Now, if we want to focus on areas of networking, I select in the product, I can select the firewall and IPS, and we're going to take the 60 and reduce that to 46 attacks related to networking. In here, we take the list of 46 attacks, and we're going to apply these attacks to the organization or your environment. So while we take these attacks, import them into the platform, and then we have those 46 attacks. Now, what we're going to do with this is then we can save this, or we can play this and apply this to your environment. And the way we do this is we select the source and the destination, which is the inside and the outside. So the example what I showed earlier in the previous slide, that's what we're doing here, is we're running an attack through your environment by selecting the source and destination. So we run this, and then what we're doing is we're firing off those 46 attacks related to UNC 1130 across your firewalls. And the purpose of this is to see how well your firewall is going to detect or block those attacks, okay? Now, another way we can do this is also showing you here how this is applied, is the inside to the outside, and you see the technologies we're testing is the firewalls and the proxies. So the next step I want to show you is once we have these attacks applied, what do you do with the information that's gathered? So what we can do is we take through the MITRE ATT&CK, through the validation platform, and we then select the critical access, in this case, and we're interested in that. So if we open that portal up, we can see the technology associated with critical access of that tactic. And then if we wanted to see which technologies are performing well in a particular technique, such as exploit and credential access, we can click on that and then show you how well your controls are performing. So they're doing very well, they're blocking and detecting all the attacks that we run. So this is just a very short example how you would actually utilize once you've run the attacks through your environment, and then understand how you can understand how your controls are performing. Okay. In this case, we've got going through the firewall. We can then go to the actual attack that we ran in the past, historically. Okay. And there's the evidence of the results. Okay. So what I want to do is take you through 3 case studies that we have across APJ. And the first one I wanted to cover off is a telecommunication company, and they're looking at security controls and evaluating how their security controls are performing. So the first thing is they run what we call a benchmark test, or using validation. And this organization has 2 security controls of endpoints, that's solutions they have. And the issue here is that they've got the running cost of running both of them. And they want to make sure they want to get the best protection of one security of endpoint control, but also reducing the cost of it. So the first thing is we fire off attacks across both of them, the exact same attacks, to make sure we're running them both the same. Step 2, we will then run and gather the results of those attacks. And step 3, we'll then measure how well those attacks perform, which one gave us the highest protection, okay? And last and least, we then make a decision on which one provides the highest protection. That will be our justification to remove one of the endpoint controls, security controls. So I'll just quickly take you through the steps of that. And so security validation, step 1, we throw the attacks to each of the endpoints. Then we gather the output, and then from there on, we measure those outputs, and then we then decide which one will give the highest protection of those results. So that's more of a cost advantage for your business and reduction in cost of running two solutions. Case study 2, we've come across as a manufacturing company, and we're really looking at how we're misconfiguring and workflow. So in this example, this company has a outsource to an MSSP, and they want to see how effective this MSSP is performing. First thing is, the question you need to ask is, when you outsource to an MSSP, how can I measure my MSSP SLAs? Are they performing correctly? And the way this company has done it is, 1, they prepared a series of APT attacks, a life attack that's targeting the organisation, and we then ran these attacks against the defences, which the MSSP is monitoring, and then these events would then go to the MSSP, and then from there on, we wait and see what the MSSP responds. So the question you need to ask, did the MSSP detect the APT attack that we assigned? Did it actually identify the APT correctly? And did it follow the incident response steps to mitigate that attack? Now, what was the outcome of that is that the MSSP identified a portion of the APT attack and missed the whole identification of the APT. And this showcases that the MSSP required some additional work or justification why they were allowed to continue working with this customer. So the step was here, we had validation, we ran the attack running a APT behavior, number of attacks. Then we ran this over various controls, the email, their networking and endpoint, and then from there on, the results were sent to the SOC team, which was outsourced to this MSSP. Now, that's a very simple use case that we use, but that was a way of justifying the next time how they could save cost or looking at a different MSSP, okay? Case study 3 that we've got in place is a healthcare, and we're looking at ways that this healthcare company works. So the organisation had a SIM, and it relied very heavily on the SIM to run operational detection. And if this SIM didn't perform correctly, that is a key point where instances may bypass, events may not be detected, or alerts may be occurring. So they used MSV to prepare and run these attacks by preparing a list of attacks that could be related to the APT that target the organisation. They ran the attacks against the technologies, and then they collected the information of those attacks from the defences such as firewalls, and that went into the SIEM. Now the question was, did those attacks that we ran, were they matching in the SIEM? Did they arrive in the right time? Are they the correct attacks? Okay. So the point was they actually ran a few of these attacks to fine-tune their SIEM, and they eventually were able to make it more effective and also mitigated the risk or reduced the risk. If a real attack occurred, they were more prepared to react to the incident. So here we have security validation running. We have the attack coming across your security control, and then number 2, we would then run that across my SIEM, and then from there on, we repeat that over and over and over. And what we're trying to do is see if there's any misconfigurations for the SIM, and hopefully we'll improve that by fixing those gaps we identified. So that's probably the 3 use cases that we come across, in our organization, and there are many more that we can run MSV for. So what I'll do is like to say thank you for your time, and I'll hand this over to Ryan.
Thank you. 마이크에 땀이 흥건합니다. 네, 너무 열정적인 발표 해주셨고요. 지금 이제 발표를 해주신 필립님께서는 APJ에서 MSV, 그러니까 바스 제품의 MSV의 영역에 대해서 가장 기술력이 있으시고 어떤 인사이트가 가득하신 최고의 기술자 분이시고, 그분께서 이제 저희에게 이제 말씀을 해주셨던 내용은 MSV를 이용을 해서 우리의 조직에 있는 어떤 보안 솔루션들이 얼마만큼 우리의 의도대로 잘 동작을 하고 있는지를 판단을 하는 방법, 그리고 그것이 왜 중요한지 정량적으로 측정을 해서 우리가 어떻게 활용을 해야 되는지에 대해서 설명을 해 주셨고요. 그리고 그 전에 앞서서 우리가 인텔리전스에 대해서 많이 얘기를 들었는데, 지금 들으면 너무 복잡해요. 너무 어려운 얘기고, 사실 인텔리전스를 쓰고는 있다라고 한데 이거를 실제 우리의 업무에 어떻게 녹여야 될지에 대해서 항상 우리는 큰 고민을 가지고 있습니다. 그런데 MSV라는 솔루션을 통해서 인텔리전스를 쉽게 우리의 제품, 우리가 가지고 있는 보안 솔루션들을 측정할 수 있는데 활용하는 데모를 통해서 우리가 이것들을 인텔리전스를 잘 활용하는 것들에 대해서 지금 소개를 해드렸습니다. 제가 여기서 이제 말씀을 드리고 싶은 거는 사실 제가 발표하는 시간이 중간이에요. 딱 중간이어서 지금 주무시고 계신 분들도 계시고 조금 많이 이제 텐션이 늘어진 것 같은데, 여기에서 제가 좀 중간 점검을 하고 넘어가고자 이런저런 얘기를 많이 하고 있어요. 그래서 하고 싶은 얘기는 이렇습니다. 인텔리전스를 기반으로 당신의 기업에 위협이 되는 공격을 즉시 시뮬레이션 할 수 있어요. 인텔리전스, APT, 41, 언크, 블라블라블라 여러 가지 많이 있는데 사실 어떻게 해야 되는지 모르잖아요. MSV로 즉시 시뮬레이션 할 수 있어요. 이것으로 얻을 수 있는 이점은 당신의 조직의 방어 체계가 어느 정도 수준인지 정량적으로 판단할 수 있습니다. 저희 임원분들께서 뉴스 기사 보시고 저희한테 이런 질문 많이 하시죠. 야, 옆에 회사 공격당했는데 우리 잘 막고 있냐? 라고 물어보시죠. 네, MSV로 시뮬레이션 하면은 네, 저희 잘 막고 있습니다 라고 대답을 하거나, MSV를 시뮬레이션해서 네, 저희 잘 막으려고 노력은 했는데 잘 안 막혀서요, 이런 플랜을 준비하고 있습니다 라고 마침표로 저희가 대답을 할 수 있게 돼요. 정량적으로 측정할 수 있다는 의미는, 이점은 이런 부분에 대해서 우리가 가져갈 수 있다는 부분이고, MSV는 이러한 이점 때문에 이미 전 세계의 수많은 기업들이 저희와 함께 하고 있습니다. 사실 바스 시장이라는 게 굉장히 생긴 지 얼마 안 됐어요. 근데 이러한 개념은 예전부터 많이 있었거든요. 근데 뭐 얼마 안 됐는데도 불구하고 각광을 받고 있는 그런 제품군입니다. 다시 한번 정리를 한다면, 저희가 보안 솔루션의 효율성에 대해서 이제 생각을 해보고 구성을 하고 설정에 대해서 우리가 잘 만들어 놓고 솔루션을 MSV를 통해서 최적화를 시킵니다. 최적화를 시키고 그것에 대해서 여기서 최적화를 한다라는 의미는 잘 탐지가 되도록 설정을 유지한다라는 의미예요. 유지한다라는 의미는 또한 합리적인 운영을 할 수 있다라는 얘기거든요. 합리적인 운영을 할 수 있다라는 얘기는 당연히 투자 계획도 명확하게 가져갈 수 있다라는 얘기예요. 네, 이러한 과정들을 반복해서 한다라고 하면 최적의 보안 수준을 가져갈 수 있고요. 사실 바스라고 저희가 설명을 드리면 브리치 어택 시뮬레이션이잖아요. 이거를 점검과 혼동을 많이 하시는 경우도 있으세요. 근데 이러한 과정들은 점검처럼 분기별 한 번, 반기별 한 번 이렇게 해야 되는 대상들이 아니라 지속적으로 이루어졌을 때 가장 효과가 극대화되는 그런 시뮬레이션입니다. 그렇기 때문에 이러한 지속적인 시뮬레이션을 통해서 우리가 가져갈 수 있는 것을 다시 한번 정리를 해보면, 우리가 지금 보안을 하기 위한 가장 큰 목표는 두 가지로 나눌 수가 있어요. 위협을 탐지를 하거나 위험을 관리하기 위해서. 네, 두 가지예요. 저희가 보안을 하는 이유는 두 가지입니다. 위협을 탐지하거나 위험을 관리하기 위해서. MSV는 이 위협과 위험을 관리하고 탐지하기 위한 근간이 되는 지식이 되는 인텔리전스를 실제적으로 활용할 수 있도록 우리에게 간단하게 만들어주는 그런 제품이라고 말씀드릴 수 있을 것 같아요. 네, 이러한 과정들을 아까 말씀드린 대로 지속적으로 반복해서 시뮬레이션을 한다라고 하면 우리는 보안 환경을 이제 지속적으로 개선을 할 수 있겠죠. 네, 할 수 있고요. 그렇게 하다 보면은 보안 효율성이 이제 향상이 됩니다. 보안 효율성이 향상이 된다라는 의미는 당연히 우리의 탐지 수준과 위험 관리 능력이 올라가는 의미와도 일맥상통한다라고 말씀을 드리면서 저는 이제 발표를 마칠 거고요. 제가 들어가기 전에 이제 말씀드리고 싶은 거는 이미 저쪽에 상품들이 이제 많이 준비가 되어 있더라고요. 네. 상품 이제 받으셔야 되니까 마지막까지 집중력 잊지 않으시고 끝까지 경청 부탁드리면서 저는 이만 마치도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.